am so excited and grateful for our special guest today. This is Vladimir Zakovic. Vladimir is the founder of the Blue Lotus Meditation and Mindfulness Center. He has garnered both a national and international following as he continues to teach and share the Dharma with compassion, loving kindness, and sincerity. How are you, Vladimir?
Oh, what a wonderful introduction, Jisun. Thank you so much.
Of
I'm doing
course.
very well. Thank you. Thank you
Excellent.
for having me. Thank you for
I'm
inviting me.
I'm so honored you said yes and you're giving and sharing your time here. Let's start with our first question. Our first
Sure.
question, I love this question because I think I understand a lot more of what is underlying someone
Mhm.
and their embodiment of their presence here on this planet this time around. And the question for you, Vladimir, is how would you describe your essence?
I would hope it's kindness,
Mm.
in essence. Essentially, right? It would be kind. I
Hmm.
didn't, and it took me a little bit of time to kind of to nurture that a little bit. I
Okay.
think most of the time as little kids, when we see little kids on the playground, they're kind and generous and warm-hearted and so forth. But, maybe as I got a little bit older, like the teen years and so forth, and, maybe like most teenagers, kind of like all about me, the ego,
Hmm.
I, me, mine.
Hmm.
And it just took a little bit of realization, like, that's not me.
Mm.
I really am not a self-centered, give it all to me. So I, essentially, or my essence, I try to be as kind as I can and understanding and forgiving.
Wow.
That's what I try to be anyway. I do my best.
Kindness, understanding, and forgiving.
Hmm.
Are there specific instances or experiences you've had in your life that make those the top three for you?
You know what? There is. And this is typically when I would interview for like retail positions back in the old days or
Uh-huh.
whatever, I always bring this one up, like where kindness would kind of come in and maybe not such a hard line attitude was I worked at a large um, cellular telephone company.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine sometimes people getting unexpected bills, especially with college students, right?
Uh-huh.
I had a parent come in and they're like, and he came in very pleasantly, right? And he really did. And it was an exorbitant amount of money on his bill. He's like, anything you can do about it? I'm like, absolutely. Right? I just wrote it all off. I
Wow.
did. I just credited it all off. I was like, here's your month. You pay your monthly bill, what
Mm-hmm.
was, appropriate, but all these extra charges, let's just get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And his attitude after it was done was like, wow, that is not something I expected.
Mm-hmm.
I expected that, that hard line, that, well, you're stuck with that bill, that's what you did. That's what you saw. No, where does that get people?
Yeah.
Where does that get, how does that promote well-being and trust and compassion towards somebody else if you're just, you know, always so hard,
Mm-hmm.
especially for mistakes, or, just being unaware sometimes, why should you have to suffer greatly for that?
Mm.
That could have been somebody's rent or somebody's
Yeah.
meals and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So it's one by one,
Mm-hmm.
right? One by one that you can just spread kindness and just little acts of generosity and
Mm.
understanding and forgiveness and grace.
Mm-hmm.
That promotes well-being,
Yeah.
and that was even before the mindfulness, to be honest with you. That was really
Wow.
before that. That
Mm-hmm.
was, that was before I even started really delving into the practice a lot
Mm-hmm.
more,
Yeah.
than, like I do now. But yeah.
So speaking of, what led you to open the mindfulness
Mhm.
practice?
The benefits that I've received,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe how the Buddha would describe it, what he's lost, what I've, I got rid of anxiety, I got rid of,
Mm-hmm.
anger or, uncontrollable anger and, sadness and so forth, or uncontrollable sadness, just
Mm-hmm.
living in, those points of despair. Um, And so the benefits that I've received, how I've nurtured and grown, just by those studies and those realizations and conversations that I just have with people in general, that sad, depressed, and so forth, just really made me kind of like, there's really a big need for this. You know, um, People want to be happy. Everybody wants to be happy, but sometimes we get it in our own minds that I'm not deserving of happipiness. Oh, I deserve to be where I am, miserable and you know, bottom rung or whatnot. And that's not true, and we all have our place, right? We all have that openness and compassion within us, but sometimes that despair that we are constantly bombarded with, just noise, feelings of unworthiness, like, oh, I see these people on TV and I'm not them. Let me work hard to be like them. But that's not you, right? Be happy where you are. And it's easy to say, be happy where you are. It's very easy to say,
Yeah.
but it takes effort. It takes a little mind shift. Like, oh, I'm okay the way I am. And it took a little bit of time for me to realize that too.
Is that
So, mhm,
is that where the mindfulness came in for you? Is that how
yeah,
you got to where you are?
yeah, to some degree. So my mom is a practicing Buddhist, and she's been a Buddhist since like the mid '80s, and so I've had some exposure to it even back then, and so forth. But yeah, it really didn't resonate with me. It didn't open up to me or unfold myself until about 7 or 8 years ago now. At this point,
Wow. So you grew up with her practicing Buddhism,
yeah.
and it didn't resonate for you as you were growing older or growing up.
Mm-mm, mm-mm, no.
Were there moments where her beliefs or philosophy would clash with things that you were experiencing?
So yes.
Okay.
So this was again. This is I was in my formative teenage years. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things clash. Doesn't matter what they are, right? You're always going to clash with your parents and so forth. But it would be like, oh, well, somebody just insulted me, or
Mm-hmm.
somebody just, basically hurt my ego in some sense. Let me
Mm-hmm.
get back at them. Let me do some kind of, spiteful action towards them. And she'd be like, where does that get you? Well, that gets me feeling good. Yeah, but then that just creates a cycle. Like now they feel bad, so they have to get back at you and so forth. So, you know, that's where, my mindset was back then. It was like, kind of like what we experience and what we see a lot today. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
stepped on my toes, and let me get back at them. Or
Mm.
there's a lot of noise, let me be louder so I can be heard. So again, I'd seen it, I experienced it, but it didn't resonate until,
Mm.
until I was ready to accept it,
Yeah.
or try it. So
Okay. How
yeah.
would you describe life purpose?
Oh, purpose. So made me think about that. So purpose. And I also started thinking about the word meaning.
Mm.
Okay, so we often use those
They're
interchangeably.
not the same.
They're not the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
There can be a purpose, but there can be no meaning. And so sometimes if we want to do the old, it's not geometry, but math, algebra, I guess, where they do the Venn diagrams, right?
Uh-huh.
Sometimes they can be interchangeable or overlapping or
Mm-hmm.
intersecting. Sometimes they can be separate. So this pencil, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has a purpose, but it doesn't necessarily have meaning,
Mm-hmm.
right? The purpose is writing. I can write something down. What I write down probably, hopefully, has meaning, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
a grocery list or some thoughts or whatnot. So, purpose, a person can have a purpose. You can get up every morning and do whatever job you do, and it has a purpose. Feed your family, feed yourself, pay your bills, but does it have meaning?
Mm.
Right? So meaning is something that only you or a person or a sentient being can ascribe to something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the Venn diagram kind of comes in, right? Because
Yeah.
that's where you could overlap it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to try to find meaning in how we go about our lives, because when we have purpose, you can probably get burned out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But if you have meaning, it gives a little bit more oomph, right? A little bit more like, yeah, let me get up in the morning, 20, maybe not 20 minutes early. We're not going to push it, but let me get up,
Yeah.
and do what I can to help, in some way or form.
Wow. Would you say you feel aligned to that, where that Venn diagram meets meaning and purpose on a daily basis? Or
Yeah.
does it happen naturally, or is that something you have to remind yourself of?
So, like any person, so I would hope that there's a significant overlap, right? I really hope that there is, but like anybody, sometimes I can feel a little bit, what am I doing? And so forth. And that's where I kind of think of the meaning. That's where I kind of jump back and like, oh, well, what's the meaning? And the meaning is, and sometimes it doesn't have to be so grandiose. Like, oh, I'm out here to save everybody. Meaning can just be, I'm here to be kind, right? And that's all it really is. That's all it needs to be. I think, and sometimes I think that sets people back, right? They want to have meaning in their lives, but I think our society kind of pushes, you have to be the best. It has to be the biggest idea. It has to be revolutionary or innovative or anything like that. And I think that mindset can set people back from having a meaning in some of their things, in some of their activities. And so I think if we can kind of just bring it back to the essence, just being kind. That's enough meaning. I mean, holding the door for somebody who has maybe an armful of groceries, that's kindness. That can be meaning, right? I helped somebody with their door, so they didn't stumble and fall or whatnot. So it doesn't have to be, you know, something large and a large scale meaning, being kind is just, that's large scale right there. Think about that. How many people want to be kind, but they're afraid to? Yeah. 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 So think about, and maybe you've heard, maybe you've experienced that, oh, I'm too kind. People walk all over me, and so sometimes people get, saddened. Like, I'm doing everything for everybody else and nobody does anything for me, and but if we reframe that, I'm doing this for you because I do see you. I do see you, who you are, but I'm also doing it for me. And that's the kindness. So it's a two-way street. And sometimes we forget that. And it's not to say we need to be abused now at the same time. We don't want to, you know, um,
Be
can't pour
taken
from an
advantage
empty
of.
cup,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. So where does purpose and meaning align for you? Like, where's the overlap for you? If you were to describe it in one sentence or two, what does that sound like?
Just in my actions. So I try to be aware that who I'm looking at is not necessarily who I'm looking at. I see you, but that's not you, right? You are all up in here. This is just a physical form. And so when I try to make that action or that overlap between purpose and meaning, I try to focus on the meaning. I'm being kind to you because you are deserving to be kind. You're being treated kindly. And that's where the purpose, my purpose, right? My actions of being kind overlap with my essence of being kind or my meaning of being kind. So just try to get it, you know, it's not 100%. I'm sure
Okay.
there's probably some slivers someplace,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
maybe not. I'm still a person, but I do my best.
Okay, so where meaning and purpose align or overlap for you, Vladimir, is understanding with greater, deeper insight that the person you're looking at really isn't what you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And so aligning your essence of being kind
Mm-hmm.
with the insight or the awareness that there's
Mm-hmm.
something greater for
Mm-hmm.
you, that's where the meaning and purpose overlap.
Yeah, you
Okay.
know,
It's just in the
yeah,
way that you show up, your actions.
it is. And so our actions and how we treat people,
Mm-hmm.
that can align with a person's purpose
Mm-hmm.
and meaning. And it's up to us individually,
Yeah.
how we want to do that,
Mm-hmm.
how we want to have those two circles overlap.
Yeah. You know what question I think would help clarify a little bit for me is why? Why is kindness so important to you?
Remember the golden rule, right? We always hear about that when we're
Mm-hmm.
little, right? And you treat others how you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that is why. That is the reason why. It is because we often hear that the world is hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's cruel. It's self-centered, right? And if we keep hearing that, we start to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives us a certain paradigm, a certain callousness
Mm.
to ourselves,
Yeah.
right? Oh, it's all about me, right? But if we do follow the golden rule, right? Just, treat others
Mm-hmm.
as we want to be treated, that's kindness,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe the world can actually be a better place,
Mm.
And I know that kind of sounds utopian or idealistic, but what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Dystopian, right? All about
Mm-hmm.
ourselves and just take whatever I can and not worry about somebody else.
Mm.
We are that somebody else.
Right.
We are, we are, we are the others. As much as we others, other
Mm-hmm.
people, to them, we are the others as well.
Yeah.
And that keeps a separation,
Mm.
doesn't allow the kindness to grow, because if I'm viewing you as another and not as myself,
Mm-hmm.
then that just builds up that callousness, that hardness, that
Mm.
egocentric. Let me keep it for me. It's all
Yeah.
about me. You
Yeah.
know. So yeah.
Got it.
I
Okay.
hope that helps.
No, it totally does. Absolutely. So, Vladimir, for you, kindness is about removing the callousness from
Mhm.
this world and helping us to move from a paradigm where we remember the oneness, that we're all in it together.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
really, really beautiful. So, as we were talking, Vladimir, and I already knew this, but I definitely
Mhm.
want to speak it out loud. The pink elephant for me is that you have this aura about you. You're very, I mean, yes, the kindness is definitely there in the way you speak, but you have this gentleness and this peacefulness way about you. I'm wondering, and you've already alluded to this before, when you were younger, you're definitely not this way.
Mhm.
But I'm wondering if there was a time period, even after your adolescence, where you were not this way and you were a different type of, like, if I met Vladimir 20 years ago, who would I have met? What was he like?
Oh, that's an interesting question. There would be some similarities.
Okay.
Okay, there really would be. You would still see the same person who was loyal or who is loyal,
Mm-hmm.
who would, you know what? Jisun needs me to go do something. Let me go put this aside
Mm.
and make sure she's okay, or somebody else. That would still be there.
Yeah.
But there would be a little bit more of the party attitude.
Party attitude.
There'd be a little bit more of that in there.
Okay.
So, yeah, you would find a little bit more of the let's go to the disco, let's go to the club,
Mm-hmm.
and so forth, see what's going on and whatnot, you
Mm.
know. But again, the essence of me would still be there, and that
Yeah.
wouldn't be hard to find.
Okay.
I think somebody referred to me as, oh, what was the word? Accommodating.
Okay.
They said, oh, he's very accommodating. Because
Mm.
I didn't mind. It's
Mm.
like, I'm happy to help somebody. And even
Hmm.
back then, you may got a little snide comment like, oh, well, you got to go back and help somebody else again.
But you would still do it.
I'd still go do it. I'd still go do
Got
it.
it. Got it. So,
Yeah.
Vladimir, for that younger version of
Mhm.
yourself, or maybe it's even the Vladimir I'm looking at today that we're seeing
Mhm.
today, what would
Mhm.
you say has been the greatest challenge of your life?
Letting go.
Anything specific?
Just a lot of things.
Mm.
That's a big colloquial term, I guess, big, a lot of things. But letting go of those attachments of, you know, somebody did this to me. I'm not going to forget, I'm going to
Mm.
keep that in the back of my mindset. Um, and adopting a new lifestyle. That's not easy.
No.
That is certainly not easy.
Mm.
What do they say? 3 weeks to make a habit or something like that,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
I guess if you do it longer than that, it's a lifestyle. But the shifting of the mindset from the I, me, mine to
Hmm.
the we, ours, everybody. I guess I don't know whatever it goes to, right? But the wholeness, the
Yeah.
oneness of everybody.
Huh. So letting go of when someone would do something to hurt you or cross a
Hmm.
boundary, things like that were difficult. And
Yeah,
transitioning to a new lifestyle has been the most difficult part for you.
yeah,
Yeah.
and even even sometimes some career changes,
Mm-hmm.
would be hard. Even if it was the same um, type of field,
Mm-hmm.
just the new people, new procedures, like, oh, well, we used to do it this way, and that's the right way. So
Mm.
again, letting go of how things used to be to
Mm.
really how they are.
Yeah, letting
Right.
go.
And that's what's hard sometimes.
Mm. What would you say your emotional home is now? So mine used to be guilt. When I would struggle with relationships, my
Hmm.
emotional home was always guilt. I would always come back to feeling guilty for things.
Hmm.
Is there one for you that comes to mind?
Sometimes it's uncertainty.
Mm, okay.
Like, am I doing the right thing?
Resonate with that. Yeah.
Yeah, am I doing the right thing to help somebody else?
Mm,
You know, and it kind of goes down to the kindness, right? Because we
mm,
want to help people. At least I think we all want to try to do our best to help others as well. And one of the things that we want to say is yes all of the time.
mm.
And yes isn't always the helpful,
Yeah.
answer,
Yeah.
you know. And so sometimes, and I can't dwell there, and I have to remind myself I can't dwell on that too long. And so
Mm,
when we say it's my home, it's like I'll sit there for a little bit, but like, oh, you know what? I've already made a commitment. I've
mm.
already said something, and now I just have to like kind of let it flow.
Yeah.
Because again, yes is not always the appropriate answer.
Yeah.
People want to hear yes, but
Mm-hmm.
they may not personally be ready for a yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it may end up doing more harm than good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that
Absolutely.
would
Oh,
be,
that
that
was
would,
really poignant. What would you say outside of meditating has been the most fulfilling way for you to cultivate positive emotions and navigate quote unquote negative ones?
as I get rid of the fly, right? That's buzzing around my head. To cultivate those positive, like, so outside, I just enjoy being around people.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Mm.
positive for me. A lot of people, sometimes they can get a little, um, little anxiety around other people. So that's how I just, I don't know if it's not make myself happy, allow myself to be happy, but um,
Mm.
just those positive emotions, like again, serving others is really
Mm-hmm.
is positive to me. So part of the trip that we were just on, we fed, we did some, uh, we fed some homeless, along the ways, and just, and it was nice because a lot of times people just walk by past. Think about, you see somebody,
Yeah.
with a sign out or whatnot, and just, um, how does that make somebody feel, right? They're just overlooked.
Hmm.
And we would just
Mm.
sit there and just talk with them, whether it's one or two or three, just individuals. Just,
Yeah.
it's not the meal, it's the um, recognition, the acknowledgement that they exist. And so that's how one
Mm.
of the ways I recently anyway, that, I developed or nurtured those positive attributes. But negatively,
Mm.
realizing that negativity, again, can be very
Mm-hmm.
related to perspective. Again, just because I'm told
Mm.
no doesn't mean it's a negative. There's a lesson in being told
Mm.
yes or no. And
Yeah.
again, just because you're always told yes doesn't mean it's a good thing, right? It's like winning all of the time. You don't
Mm.
learn
Mm.
how to be a good loser, right? Or um,
Yeah.
being told no all the time, those negative emotions, those negative attributes. Just
Mm.
realizing that, give it time,
Mm-hmm.
it may be a positive. So don't look at
Mm.
immediate. Don't look at that immediate time. Give it some space
Yeah.
and see what grows.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I love that. So when you are experiencing negative emotions, you like to give it space and
Mm.
take the lesson from it, see what
Yeah,
grows. And for
yeah,
you, you cultivate positive emotions by being with people, to serving
hmm,
others, recognizing others in this
yeah,
world.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Vladimir.
Of course.
So you and I connected because of mindfulness and
Hmm,
meditation, and I
hmm,
know how extremely important meditating is for me to
hmm.
take that space to tune into myself, and to understand how to connect with my heart, with my spirit. And mindfulness specifically is about letting go of that judgment, right? And
Right,
being present, embodying your presence
right,
without the judgment.
right.
Do you have any tips, Vladimir, for people who have trouble sitting down to meditate?
Give it time. Don't be afraid, or don't um, stop because you feel uncomfortable or you're experiencing
Mm.
some form of discomfort. That's a normal part of the
Mm-hmm.
process. We're so often um, expecting an immediate result. Let me take a pill because I have a headache,
Mm-hmm.
and 20 minutes later it's gone. But we're dealing with ourselves, and a lot of times we're dealing with a lot of long-term trauma or um,
Mm-hmm.
societal imprints, and it takes a while for those to get away or for them to just
Mm.
dissipate and move downstream where they don't need to be. So give it time, and don't be afraid of discomfort, because it's actually you starting to recognize, oh, this isn't quite healthy for me. It's kind of like choking on smoke, right? Your body knows it's not
Mm-hmm.
good for you, right? Got to get rid of it if you're at a
Mm-hmm.
campfire or something, right? So
Yeah.
give it time. Let it
Okay.
dissipate on its own.
Yeah. So just to clarify, it's not the body saying the meditation is not good for you when you find discomfort. When you find
Right.
discomfort, what is it that we're finding discomfort with?
Could be any kind of situations. Something that maybe in um, our own personal history that we may find discomforting.
Mm.
Um, One of the examples I like to think of is, remember in sixth grade, getting called up in math class, right? Go do the problem on the board, right? Now I don't like to public speak, maybe somebody doesn't like to public speak because of that. And so maybe they start working on meditation so I can become a better public speaker to get rid of that anxiety. And part of that recollection may be, oh, I'm thinking about that time when I was in sixth grade. That's an uncomfortable time because, you know, 28 other kids in the class looking and laughing at me because I can't do a math problem. And so that's what I'm that kind of discomfort. Let that, we don't live there anymore.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for that advice. That
Oh,
is
you're very
extremely
welcome.
helpful for those of us who struggle in the beginning with meditating, because I know I did. It was hard to just sit and to meditate because my mind was going 100 miles a minute. But to have patience and to give it time was exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Get that monkey
So,
mind, right?
Vladimir, I am so grateful. Yes, the monkey mind, exactly. I'm so grateful that you are here and you're sharing your presence with us today. For those of us that want to connect with you more, want to learn more about your service, your gifts to this world, where can we send them?
So our website is www.bluelotusmeditation.us. So it's not a .com, it's a
Okay,
.us. You can find us right there. All types of free
excellent.
resources as well.
Any social media handles that you'd like to share?
Facebook and Instagram at Blue Lotus Center. So yes, and
Excellent.
YouTube as well. I
Excellent.
think that's Blue
Awesome.
Lotus Meditation.
And YouTube. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and YouTube.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Vladimir, for your time today.
You're very welcome, Jisan.
I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, take care.